I'm super excited to finally share with you how I made this chunky bucket hat, which is inspired by what IU wore in her Strawberry Moon music video. Now, just to manage your expectations, this project I will be showing you is not an exact copy of IU's hat. The materials, the stitches, and even the shape vary. What I made has a shorter crown with a more flared brim, while IU's hat looks more like a beanie with a less flared brim. In fact, you can purchase IU's hat from this shop with a name I couldn't pronounce. I'll link it below. It retails for nearly 200,000 Korean won, which of course many of us couldn't easily shell out, never mind for a hat. Anyway, I've been talking too much, so let's get to it. This project is far more experimental than any other item I've made in my past tutorials, so I settled with the materials that were accessible to me at the time. I used about 200 grams of t-shirt yarn, two types of woolly yarn, thin and thick, really thin cotton yarn in off-white, an 8mm crochet hook to work with the t-shirt yarn, a 4.5mm crochet hook for the brim, and scissors. Alternatively, you can use a 5 or 6mm crochet hook to make the brim a bit wider. Then you will also need a darning needle. Of course, you gotta weave in those ends. And these last two materials are completely optional, but I like sewing the ends of the t-shirt yarn to join them. You'll see what I mean as you watch this video. To begin, take the t-shirt yarn and the white cotton yarn. Then make a magic circle with your 8mm crochet hook. Everyone has their own way of making magic circle. This is just how I do mine. So I wrap the yarns around my fingers twice to form two lines. Then I pull up the lower line, twist it to the right, and then pull up the working yarn, then tug it nice and tight. So just be sure to make the circle a bit bigger since you will be working with really thick yarn. The strands might be tangled up a bit, so you just have to organize them before proceeding to the next step. So once you've got that all sorted out, just take your hook, insert it into the loop, and then make a single crochet into the magic circle. You just have to wiggle it up a bit. And then once you pull up the loop, make sure that you pulled up both strands, the t-shirt yarn and the cotton yarn. And then chain two. It's one, and then two. This will be counted as your first double crochet for this round. Now, we will be making 9 more double crochets around the magic circle. So, yarn over, then go through the circle, pull up the loop, then yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then the last 2 loops. Just be careful when you're pulling up the loops to make sure that you're pulling both strands of the yarn. And then make another one. So just do the same process for the rest of the round. If you've made a bucket hat before, it's pretty much the same, although you'll be working with really thick yarn this time, and 2 strands at that. I'll be seeing you once I've completed this round, okay? Once you've reached the end of the round, you have all your 10 double crochets around the magic circle. Just pull the loose ends to tighten your magic circle. Make sure to pull both the cotton and the t-shirt yarn tightly. I can be a bit rough when pulling the strings, but yeah, you have to close the circle in the middle. And then just make a slip stitch, oops, not here, at the topmost chain that you've made earlier to close the round. Whenever you're locking with the slip stitch, make sure that you're including both the cotton and the t-shirt yarn. Sometimes they get hidden somewhere, so you might not pull them both. Anyway, this is your round 1. We have 10 stitches right here, and we can start round 2. So round 2 will be our increase round. So we start with chain 3. Again, chain 3 will be counted as our first double crochet for this round. And then insert it in every stitch, okay? An increase for every stitch, counting this chain 3 as our first double crochet. And then we make an actual double crochet and insert it into the nearest stitch. Okay, just like that. And then this would be your first increase set. And then for the next stitch, you will be making 2 double crochets. Okay, so yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And right at the same stitch, you will make double crochet again. Just like that. So for the rest of the round, you will be doing the exact same pattern. Okay, so once you're done with your first increase round, you will be making a slip stitch at the topmost chain of the start of round 2. The great thing about t-shirt yarn is that it's quite stretchy, so you can just place it over the hook. And then wiggle it up again and pull through all the loops like that. So the hat might appear a bit curved, but that doesn't matter because it will get wider eventually. So to start round 3, again, chain 3. It's basically the same pattern for the rest of the hat. It's repetitive, but yeah, just bear with me. Okay, now we're going to count that chain as a double crochet again, and then insert the increase right next to it. It's 1 double crochet and another one right at the same stitch. Oopsie. There. And then in the next stitch, you'll be inserting just 1 double crochet. So we will be working with increase, 1 double crochet, and then increase. So in the next stitch, you will be making another increase. See that? Just repeat the same process for the entire round, and then these spaces, you can close them up later. Don't be too bothered by them, but if you want to try the seamless route, then you can do that. However, I cannot share tips with you because I've never tried it before with t-shirt yarn, but yeah, you can try it, and then you can let me know if that works for you. I'll see you again once we're done with this round. So we're here again in the end, and of course we have to lock the round using a slip stitch at the topmost chain that we made earlier. So just slip stitch that, pull through all the loops, And that's pretty much it. Now, chain 3 again, as we will be starting the last increase round. So that will be our first double crochet, and then we will be inserting another double crochet right here. For this round, we will be working 2 intervals of double crochets before making an increase. So we will make the first increase right at the stitch. So that's 1, and then right at the same stitch, another double crochet. That's 2. Right here, just a simple double crochet, and then another double crochet at the next stitch, and an increase right here. So 2 double crochets right at the same stitch. So just repeat the same pattern for the rest of the round. Now that we've reached the end of round 4, you'll lock it in with a slip stitch at the topmost chain. There. And now for the rest of the rounds, you will simply be making double crochets in every stitch. So we start with our usual chain 3, and then insert your hook into each stitch to make a double crochet. No more increases this time. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, then pull through 2 loops, and the last 2 loops. And again, right at the next stitch, a double crochet. So just keep making double crochets for the rest of the round until round 8. Once you've used up all your yarn in the first ball, just sew the 2 ends together to connect both balls of yarn, and then pull it up a bit. Now, it doesn't have to be too neat, because you will be crocheting it anyway, so just to save a lot of yarn and not make any bulky bumps along the way, you can sew them like this. I now have here the almost complete top and crown of the hat. So to lock it in, again, the final slip stitch for the first part of your hat, like that, and then just make something like a chain to pull it, and then you can finally snip both strands that you're working with. Then just pull it up and tuck it nice and tight. Since we have loose ends here, we will use them to close up these spaces in the middle by weaving them in. Once you're done weaving in all the ends, we can start at the next part of this project, which is the brim. So you can use a 4.5 mm crochet hook or a slightly bigger crochet hook between maybe 5 and 6 mm. The bigger hook can make you a wider brim, while the smaller hook can make you a less flared brim. So it's really up to you. I choose this one though. So I'll be working with the 6mm crochet hook for my brim. So join your yarn with your project. Do whatever you're comfortable with to join it. This is just how I do mine. So I make a chain here, and then just to start it up, I make a single crochet right at the same stitch. Now we have loose ends here. We will be stitching over them, so make sure to hold them in place. And then make another single crochet right at the next stitch. In fact, you will be making increases for each stitch to start off the brim. So that's 2 single crochets into each stitch. Oopsie. Okay, like that. So just keep getting at it for the rest of the round. Now that we've reached the end of the first round of the brim, I cut the yarn and I take my darning needle. We wouldn't be making a slip stitch to lock this round because we want to make it look a lot neater. So to make it look neat, we have to use a darning needle and then just kind of stitch it through the first chain that we made right here. It's kind of tough working with woolly yarn, honestly. Yeah, just pull it. And then go right back to the previous stitch. See, you've closed it without making it look a bit bumpy. So just lock it in from behind so that it can't be seen. These are loose ends because I ran out of yarn earlier, so don't mind those. I'll be weaving them in later after I lock this. So there, just to secure it, I will make another loop. And then thread it through the stitches. Make sure to do this at the wrong side of the hat. Oopsie. Okay, there we go. Now for the second round of the brim, we will be working with the thicker woolly yarn. It's lighter in color, so yeah. Just insert your hook right at the start and join it. Really, you can do whatever you're comfortable with. This is just a, technique that I've been using for quite a while now. You can do or use whatever technique you're most comfortable with. So, now for this round, we will be working 4 single crochets and then an increase, and then 4 single crochets again and an increase. Okay, so let's make our first single crochet, then another right at the next stitch, the third one, and the fourth one, Now for this next stitch, we will be making our first increase. That's one single crochet and another right at the same stitch. So this is the exact pattern that you will be following for this round. At the end of the round, just lock it in with a slip stitch at the chain that we made to start out this round. Just work it. Like that, and then chain 1 to begin the next round. So for this round, we will just be working one single crochet for each stitch, and we will be doing this for 3 rounds. So just single crochet in every stitch, and then lock it in once you're done, all for 3 more rounds. Once you've made 3 rounds of the single crochets, just snip the yarn, pull it through, and then again we will be taking the darning needle to give it a neat finish. Okay, so thread it through the first stitch, like that, and then go right back to the previous stitch. See how it makes kind of like a stitch appearance, and it looks nicer and cleaner here. And then at the back we just have to weave it in. And then snip it, and there we go. So now we're going to take the 2 strands of the thinner yarn again and work up a loop, and then we can hold the loose end right in place and insert our hook right at the next stitch, right here, then pull up another loop and pull it through the previous loop. It's kind of like a slip stitch, so we will be slip stitching our way throughout this round. Let's make slip stitches to give it some kind of a lining, I would say. It doesn't add anything to this round, it's just a simple lining. See? Once you have slip stitched through the entire round, snip those strands and then pull it up again. As usual, take your darning needle, thread the yarn through, and now we have to insert it in the second stitch. We can't do it with the first because this is still loose, so do it in the second stitch, right here, and then return to the previous stitch and thread it through. See how it doesn't form any bumps? And at the back, you can just stitch over this later, but for this loose end that we're working with, have to weave it through. So we lock it in. Pull it nice and tight. And just kind of hide it through the back side of the brim. Let's see. Okay. I think that's hidden enough, so we snip the yarn. This one, again, we will be stitching over it later. There's no need to worry about that. All we need is a clean finish. So we start with the next round. So again, change your yarn. And then go right back to that same stitch and pull up a loop to complete a single crochet. See that. So for this round we will be working single crochets in 8. So yeah. And then we make an increase after 8 single crochets, working our second now. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure to stitch over the loose ends so that you wouldn't have to weave them in anymore. This would be our last. So that's the 8th. In the next stitch we will be making 2 single crochets to make the increase. It's 1 and then go right back for the second single crochet to make the increase. So you're done and you've finished the round with a slip stitch. Just chain 1 again and then start the next round, in which we will just be working single crochets for each stitch. So 1 single crochet for each stitch for the next 2 rounds. Never increase, just single crochets, okay? Okay, so we're almost done with the brim of the hat. You just have to close it in with a darning needle once you've done all the rounds. And then switch your yarn again to make the same lining with these 2 strands of the thinner yarn. This would be the last lining round for this brim. So again, just pull up a loop, then insert it into the next stitch, pull up another loop, and make the slip stitch. Again, you will be slip stitching your way throughout this round. Just like before, it doesn't add anything other than the lining effect. Okay. Again, we have reached the end of the lining round. So just again, take your needle, thread the yarn through, and stitch it through, not here, but at the second stitch. Again, the first one is still loose, so you have to stitch it through the next stitch. Okay, it's the second one. And then go right back into the previous stitch. Then insert it through to hide it at the back side of the brim, like so. I will be weaving in the ends, but I will also be locking them somewhere later. I just want to get out of the bumpy side of this hat. I don't want to make it look too bulky. So yeah, just weave my way through this and lock it eventually. Now the reason why I use the darning needle is because the first hat that I made looked so bumpy, it didn't look nice when worn, so I decided to try other techniques to get rid of it, and by comparison, it looks better, right? Okay, for the final rounds of the brim, you just have to switch the yarn again with the thicker woolly yarn. This would be the last time you will be switching yarns. Yay! Okay, so we have here a loop and just chain one, and then work another single crochet right at the same stitch. Now you will be working 16 single crochets before making an increase. So our intervals are 4 and then 8, and for this round it's 16 before making an increase. Make sure to stitch over the loose ends so we wouldn't have to weave them in again later. So once you have 16, you just have to make an increase right at the next stitch, so that's 1 and 2 single crochets right at the same stitch. Of course, you gotta lock the previous round with a slip stitch, then start a new one with a chain 1, and then make a single crochet right at the next stitch. So for this final round, you will just be making single crochets for each stitch. Again, just single crochet your way through this round without increasing. This is the final round of the brim. Once you have reached the end, it's time to close it up again. So just snip that and pull it through. And take your darning needle. We will be using the same technique that we've been using earlier to give it a clean and less bumpy finish. Okay. So insert your needle through first stitch and then go right back to the previous stitch. There. See how it nicely closes this round? It's far better than what I did before. This is what happens when you make a slip stitch to close that. But I like it to look nice and clean, so I really prefer this method. Just lock it in, pull it nice and tight, and then just weave and through the back side of the brim. Snip the last end. There you go. It might look a bit uneven here. Don't worry, it will even out as you wear it. You can even give it a good stretch. Notice how it's almost seamless? Well, almost. There you go. If you need a written pattern of this project, you can find it on my crochet blog, and yes, you can access it for free. Don't forget to follow me, The Morning Hooker, on Instagram for more crochet inspo and K-pop inspired projects. And if you try your hand at making this bucket hat, please tag me to your work. I'd love to see it. As always, thanks for watching!